We are in the series called Heaven and Hell. Okay, and the way we've been approaching this is first, number one, we read through the verses about heaven and hell and heaven. So whatever you think the verses are, like, oh yeah, that verse must be about hell, or that verse must be about heaven, we're going to read it, and then we're going to talk about what we think it means. And then, when we discover it's not, we go to number two, and then we're going to learn the intended lesson of those verses. Okay? So today we're going to be looking at Matthew chapter 5, when Jesus uses the word hell. I know for a while, like in our culture, the word hell is like taboo. You're not supposed to say it. So like, use the word heck. Do you want me to use the word heck? Hell is fine, right? Okay, H-E double hockey stick. Okay, so we're going to talk about hell today when Jesus used the word hell. And what we're going to learn today is that the people who interpreted the Bible interpreted a specific word into the word hell, and we're going to talk about that. Okay, so here we go. This is Jesus speaking. Anyone who says to a brother or sister, roja, right? That means like you're empty, like you have no value, is answerable to the court. And anyone who says, you fool, I don't know if you guys ever use that, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. There it is, hell, right there. Whoa, Jesus, okay. So you're already conjuring up images of what does Jesus really mean here, right? For those of you who use the word fool and pointing at a person, you're going to hell. That's what it says. No, that's what it reads, but that's not what it says. Let's keep going. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, that means like a worship service, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First, go and be reconciled to that person that you have conflict with, and come and offer your gift. So Jesus is saying, if you ever called somebody roja or fool, there's clearly something like a conflict between you and that person. If you come to worship service, make sure you get that sorted out and then come back and continue your worship. That's what he's saying here. Or else you'll go to hell. That's what it sounds like he's saying. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, this is what we call a parallel passage. A parallel passage is, so we just read a passage from Matthew. It turns out the story of Jesus is repeated 4 times. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. This is Mark's version of that same story. In his version, he adds this line. And if your eye causes you to stumble, pluck it out. It is better for you to enter the kingdom of God with one eye than to have 2 eyes and be thrown into, oh, there it is again, hell, where the worms that eat them do not die and the fire is not quenched. What is Jesus talking about? Now, what you're thinking about is clearly, and I will agree with you, Jesus is talking about this topic of hell, okay? And what you think he's saying is this, because this is what I was taught growing up. Anyone who calls someone raha or fool will go to hell after they die, although Jesus never talked about this is going to happen to you after you die. We just kind of insert that because we think that's what it says, right? They will burn and worms will eat their bodies forever. Like, is this what you got out of that verse? Because am I the only one that got that out of that verse the first time I read it? Okay. No? Okay. Clearly this sermon is for me because that's not what you guys probably already know where I'm going with this. The word for hell in the Greek is this word right here. It's the word Gehenna because the New Testament is written, original language is Greek, ancient Greek. And the word is Gehenna. Every time Jesus used the word hell, he's using the word Gehenna in the Greek Bible, okay? Now, how many of you guys knew this, that the word hell is the word Gehenna? Raise your hand. All right, Pastor Stan and some other people over there. Okay. Now, the word Gehenna is a Greek version of a Hebrew word. Who knows what the Hebrew word is? Nathan, you know?
I think I do.
Yeah, what is it?
Is it like, like
Close. Yeah. It's Ge Ben Hinnom. Ge means valley in the Hebrew. Ben means son of Hinnom. So there's this guy named Hinnom who has a son, and that guy owned the valley, and he named it after himself. It's called the Valley of Gehenna. Okay, and that's why in the Greek they change it to Gehenna. Now, I want to address something that's really interesting here, okay, because there is an urban legend about this place. And it's not just an urban legend that some weirdo came up with and it spread through social media and now everybody believes it. It's not. It's actually an urban legend that scholars spread, and now they're looking back and saying, why do we spread that? That's okay. We're going to get to that, but before we get to that, I want to quote a scholar. His name is Bart Ehrman. Very, very famous, very smart guy. It is highly unfortunate that sometimes English translations of the New Testament render the Greek word Gehenna as hell. So this guy is saying, whenever we see the word Gehenna and a translator is like, oh, that's the word hell, it's like we're doing such a disservice. Why? Well, he continues. That conjures up precisely the wrong image for Bible readers today, making them think Jesus is referring to the underworld of fiery torment, and everyone's burning, help us, right? Where people go for eternal punishment for their sins. That is not what Gehenna refers to at all. This is somebody that's like a scholar that scholars look up to. He's saying, we need to stop interpreting the word Gehenna as hell because it is not helping anybody. Well, what should we do? Well, he says, on the contrary, Gehenna, it was a place well known among Jews in Jesus' day. When Jesus used the word Gehenna, everybody's like, oh, I know where that is. I was there the other day. I had a family picnic there. It's a place. It's not hell. Now, if you go and read more modern translations, and they'll see that the word Gehenna is now used in place of hell. That's cool. But for people who use old commentaries, it still says hell on it. So I'm just letting you know, be kind to people who don't know this because this is more modern scholarship. Now, let's talk about Gehenna. What is Gehenna? Or where is Gehenna? Or who is Gehenna? Okay, Gehenna is a section south of Jerusalem. Now, Jerusalem was built long time ago. And long time ago, let's go show you a picture of what it used to look like. This is what it used to look like. This will be the entrance. People come in through here, and there's a temple over there. Now, as you can see, it's on a hill, right? It's elevated. Over here, we call this the Kidron Valley. Oh, when Jesus was praying, by then it was a different looking temple. But when Jesus was praying, he was on Mount Olives. That's this hill over here, right? This valley over here, it's like a gorge, I guess. This is called the Central Valley. And down here, I couldn't find an image that actually had this section here. This is Gehenna. So here's a 3D rendering of that. So if that's the city we just saw, the Valley Hinnom, or Gehenna, is down here. And it wraps around. So if you could go there today, actually. And as a matter of fact, if you go there, if you're like dad jokes and stuff, you could say oh, I went to hell. So next slide. This is what hell looks like. Here's the funny thing about this, okay? Because when you think about Gehenna, you think it's this fiery place where people are crying, help us, right? No. As a matter of fact, if you go over here today, there's a petting zoo in hell. Isn't that cool? It's like, maybe there's like a goat and say this, I met Satan. No, don't do that. Okay, and because it's a valley, there's in the last 10, 15 years, they built this bridge so you can actually walk over hell and look down at the people, look at the people in hell. So a lot of dad jokes that you could get out of this. I would totally enjoy this, right? Okay, so let me talk about the urban legend because scholars knew that hell, or Gehenna, was a location south of Jerusalem, the valley just south of Jerusalem. People knew that. Scholars knew that the whole time, right? But what happened there, so Jesus, when he talks about Gehenna, he's not talking about where you go after you die. He's talking about something that happened in that location or was currently happening at that location. So the urban legend that scholars have spread that we found out is not true is this, that Gehenna is a trash dump. I don't know if you guys heard this before. It's still in commentaries today. It's a trash dump of Jerusalem where they burned their waste. So people who believe this are like, oh yeah, Jesus is talking about a trash dump outside of Jerusalem where they throw garbage over the walls of the city, and then they light it on fire, and it's always burning, and I'm sure there's worms and maggots that are eating away flesh. But that's not true. That's just an urban legend. It's not true. As a matter of fact, they probably came up with this because at one point in their history, it was a trash dump. But that trash dump didn't appear until the 1300s, 1200s to 1300s. So it's clearly way after the time of Jesus. So here's a quote from Bart Ehrman, the smart guy. Scholars have long claimed that Gehenna was a garbage dump where fires were burned, which is why its worms never die and its fires never cease. There was always burning trash in there. That's what people believe, right? But as it turns out, there is no evidence for this claim. It can be traced to a commentary on the book of Psalms written by Rabbi David Kimhi in the early 13th century CE. Neither archaeology nor any ancient texts support this view. Okay, so for those of you who think that this urban legend, because I'm sure some of you guys heard this before, that Gehenna is a trash dump of Jerusalem where they burned their waste, that is not true. And now, why is it important for me to take the time to address this urban legend? It's because if you believe this to be true, then you start making assumptions about who God is. The assumption that we make is this: God will deal with justice in the same way we deal with trash. If you are a bad person, God's going to toss you to the side and watch you burn and forget about you. This image conjures up that image. And that is not who God is. So let's put a big X on this. No, don't go home today thinking this is true, because this is not true. This is not who God is. Incinerating away things that we don't want is not God's character. If God, according to 1 John, if God is love, would a loving God do this? Like, you're dead to me? No. Like that God wants to get rid of people? No. He loves people, right? So, what is Gehenna? What is Jesus pointing to when he says, when you do these bad things, you're going to endure the fire of Gehenna? What is he talking about? Well, Ehrman continues. He says, on the contrary, the place was notorious for ancient Jews, not because it was a dump, but because it had been a place where children had been sacrificed to a pagan god. What? Did you guys know this? It's like a question. The whole sermon is like, did you know this? Did you know that? Okay, here's a quick lesson on what's been going on. This is a timeline of Jerusalem, okay? Now, these gray dashes up here, they're the kings. There were a king, and that person would die. There's a new king, and that person would die, and so forth, okay? Now, we're going to be focusing on 3 kings, these 3 right here, because those are the 3 kings that we want to focus on. The red ones in particular. So, next slide. The first one to focus on is this one. His name is King Ahaz. Ahaz, A-H-A-Z, Ahaz. He was a bad king. He did some terrible things. Let me share with you what he did. This is from 2 Chronicles 28. Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king. Wow. Nothing wrong could go there, right? And he reigned in Jerusalem for 16 years, so until he was 36, and then he died. Unlike David, his father, he did not do what was right in the eyes of the Lord. Well, author of 2 Chronicles, tell us, what did he do wrong? Next. He followed the ways of the kings of Israel and also made idols for worshiping the Baals. Okay, quick lesson on what's going on here. When you become king, okay, you realize that you're going to be responsible for everybody in your kingdom. And you worship God, and God's like, don't worry, I got your back, don't worry, just chill, relax, sleep in, enjoy the Sabbath, whatever, right? Enjoy your meal. But you know deep down inside you really can't rest. You're like worried, like, uh-oh, like what if somebody comes in and invades or whatever? And God's like, I'm keeping those guys who want to invade your land at bay. Don't worry about it, just enjoy paradise. But he can't rest. So what he does is like, well, I heard that there's this other god. If I worship this guy, his name is Baal, B-A-A-L. If I worship Baal, then he will protect me, and he'll give us prosperity and success and all the things we need. So I'm going to worship that, and I'm going to worship this, and I'm going to worship that. And before you knew it, there's like a pantheon. Like he's just worshiping everything, right? And one of those gods, Baal in particular, required child sacrifice as a form of worship. So it says, so he burned sacrifices in the valley of Ben Hinnom, there's Gehenna right there, and sacrificed his children in the fire while they were still living, his own children. Engaging in detestable practices of the nations the Lord had driven out before the Israelites. So look, what are you doing? These are your own children. You're like, rockabye baby, woo, right? Why would you do that? And God's like, that is not part. If you want to worship me, that is not allowed. The God of love is like, I'm not going to let that happen. But they're like, but free will, I could do whatever I want. So next slide. So remember this? That is happening right here. Now just imagine the scenario here, okay? This king will go to the temple, which is up here, and they will worship God. Like, oh, God, you're so good, yes, love, and all that good stuff. And then he'll walk out down this path over here and sacrifice his child. Like, just 45 minutes ago, you were just saying that you love life, and you love children, and you love people. And 45 minutes later, you're here sacrificing and killing people and children. Like, what's going on here? There's something wrong. And God says, in the passage we just read, God says, that makes me sick to my stomach. And that went on for 16 years. 16 years. So, timeline. So, the next king after Ahaz died was his son. His name is Hezekiah. Now, Hezekiah saw this and said, yeah, there's something wrong about this. I don't think we're going to do this. So Hezekiah, he ruled for 29 years. For 29 years, what he was doing was he was trying to undo everything his dad did. So he was making sure that, okay, if there's a worship center for Baal, we're going to tear it down and replace it with like God worshiping, like Yahweh worshiping center. And he would just fix everything, right? And after everything was fixed, everybody's like, whoa, you know what? Life is better this way. But that lasted for 29 years. So for 29 years, there were like people who are like, hey, look, it's my 29th birthday. If I was born a year before that, I would not be alive right now. Like, that's the kind of world they lived in. And then Hezekiah died. Next slide. And after he died, he had his son, and his son's name is Manasseh. He became king. And you know what he did? He was like, you know what? My grandfather, I kind of like what he did. So whatever he didn't finish, I'm going to continue. It's kind of like the Kylo Ren story, right? Like, whatever my grandfather, I'm going to continue, but make it worse. Kind of a drama queen. Yeah, okay, so next slide. This is that story. This is in 2 Chronicles chapter 33. Manasseh was 12 years old when he became king. So, yeah, my son's age. And he reigned in Jerusalem for 55 years. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord, just like his grandfather did, following the detestable practices of the nations the Lord had driven out before the Israelites. So like, his father drove out all the bad things, and he just kind of said, no, please come back. We want bad things to happen here. Next slide. He rebuilt things that his dad destroyed. He rebuilt it. He built the high places his father Hezekiah had demolished. He also erected altars to the Baals. So like, let's bring him back. He sacrificed his children in the fire in the valley of Ben Hinnom, Gehenna. He did much evil in the eyes of the Lord, arousing his anger. So if his dad was like a negative 10, he's like a negative 100. Like, he's like, yeah, let's bring it back, but let's double down on that. For 55 years, children were being sacrificed. Innocent lives were being lost. He made it more evil. Now, we're not going to look at 2 Chronicles anymore, because there's another story that happens in the timeline around the same time from a perspective of a prophet of God. His name is Jeremiah. He hears about this, and God speaks to him, and now Jeremiah's like, I need to do something about this. So this is Jeremiah addressing this issue. Jeremiah chapter 7. The people of Judah have done evil. Judah is this area, the region in which Jerusalem is in, okay? So the people of Judah have done evil in my eyes, declares the Lord. They have set up their detestable idols in the house that bears my name and have defiled it. He says, this is happening right at the front door of my house. Like, the temple was considered to be the house of God, right? Even though we know he's everywhere. He says, I don't want people to think that this is my idea, because it is not. I'm actually the opposite of what's happening at the front door of my house, right? So, and here's the thing. Jerusalem was meant to be paradise. And now there's burning of children? What's going on? So he continues. These people that are supposed to be my people, have built high places of Topheth. Topheth, let me tell you what Topheth is. Topheth is a Jewish ceremonial thing, like an altar. When somebody dies of old age, right, you take the body and you place it on a Topheth and you burn it. So you have ashes and you scatter the ashes. Topheth, that's what it is. It's meant to be used on people who already passed away. However, he says, you built the high places of Topheth in the valley of Ben Hinnom, to burn their sons and daughters in the fire. You're using it on living people. How could you do that, right? Something, and he'll to be really clear, even though it's happening near my house, it is something that I did not command, and just so you know, it didn't even enter my mind. It's not even, like, it never crossed my mind at all. I would, like, on a bad day, I would even think about this, says God. So, what are you going to do about it, God? I mean, this looks really bad. Well, he tells Jeremiah, this is what I'm going to do. So beware. The days are coming. They will bury the dead in Topheth until there is no more room. This is what he's saying. Jeremiah. There is a group of people that I've been holding out because I wanted to protect my people. They're called the Babylonians. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hand off of them, and they're going to come in and invade this land because it seems like you don't deserve to be my people right now. They're going to come in and they're going to destroy the city. Yeah, my house is going to be destroyed. And when they destroy it, they're going to take your dead bodies and they're going to toss it into the valley of Ben Hinnom. Where you put innocent lives to death, that's where your body is going to be. If you put babies on Topheths, your bodies are going to be on Topheths. Then the carcasses of this people will become food for the birds. The birds are going to, like the vultures and all the prey, the predators, right, of the wild animals, and there will be no one to frighten them away. They're going to come and pick at your body, your dead bodies, and there's nobody to say, "Shoot, get away, birds." It's just going to keep gnawing at your bodies. So Jeremiah's basically saying, you guys have no idea how much God's been protecting you this whole time. And instead what you do is you start sacrificing innocent lives. I can't believe you're doing this, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop protecting you and see what happens. And Jeremiah continues. I will bring an end to the sounds of joy and gladness, meaning there were actually people who were saying yippee when babies were being killed. It's like, I'm going to bring an end to that, the little parade you were having when you sacrificed a child, and to the voices of brides and bridegrooms in the towns of Judah and the streets of Jerusalem, for the land will become desolate. Apparently there are people who are rejoicing over this bad thing, right? So, this is the story that Jesus was referring to. He wasn't talking about where you go after you die. He was talking about the events of what happened in 2 Chronicles, Jeremiah. So the Valley of Ben Hinnom, okay, so let's just be clear. This is what it is. The place where there were heaps of innocent children's bodies. And God said, if you keep this up, which they did keep up, this is what's going to happen. It's going to become the place where there were heaps of your bodies. What you have done to these children will eventually happen to you. You are digging your own grave. This is what we call the law of retribution, and we see that in the Bible a few times. Bible scholar Tim Mackey, this is what he says about that. The place where you ignite fires to consume the innocent lives of children will be the very place where you meet your demise, where your lifeless bodies will be cast as a consequence for your heinous actions. You keep that up, that will be your destruction. And then he says this, God is warning his people with an inverse of the golden rule. What I have done to others will be done to me. How many of you guys knew that about this story, right? Yeah. So whenever Jesus used the word hell, he's referring to this. It's the worst that a human being could create. So, you're like, wow, those guys are bad people. Good thing we're way more civilized today, huh? Let's see how this sits with you. Okay. The problem with Jerusalem back in those days is that the kings valued success over their own children. They were willing to sacrifice their children so that they have a better life. How many of us have neglected our children for the sake of success? We are no better than these people. And what God would say in this situation, in today's situation, is if you grow up believing that your success is more important than your children, one day your children are going to grow up thinking the same thing, and when you need them the most, when you're old, they would value their success over you. You dug your own grave. That's what Gehenna is all about. You will end up alone because you created that world for yourself, and now you're bearing the consequences of it. That's what hell, quote unquote hell, is. So the point here is this, that the fire of Gehenna is lit by us. We are the ones that have done this. And the continuation of that story is the fire, that same fire that we lit, will ultimately be our destruction. So, we're going to look back at Matthew chapter 5 and see how that fits in with Jesus' story, his lesson here. Okay, so what did Jesus mean when he said this? You have heard it said, you heard that it was said to the people long ago, you shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. This is from Exodus. It's one of the 10 Commandments. Like, don't commit murder. Don't kill people. But he says, but I tell you that, because in case there are people out there who are like, well, today I didn't kill anybody. I'm good. I'm going to go home thinking that God is happy with me. It's like, no, But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. What? I didn't kill anybody. It's like, no, but you were angry with somebody. Well, what do you mean by that? He continues. Anyone who says to a brother or sister, Racha, is answerable to the court, and anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. So what does he mean here? Okay, so let's kind of review. Matthew chapter 5, 21 through 30, what we thought it meant, and we know that it doesn't mean, is not a lesson about how calling people names will land you in hell. That is not what this is about. Hopefully we all agree with that now, right? Okay. What he's really trying to say is this. When you ignore the good in human beings, when you look at somebody say, you have no value, you have no worth, you are not a human being, I'm going to treat you less than human, when you treat somebody like a slave, when you treat people like numbers, when you treat people like they don't belong, when you fail to see the image of God in each single person, right? You are lighting a fire that will eventually undo humanity. You are destroying your own kind, he would say. You are looking at somebody saying, you don't matter to me. You know what you're doing? You're starting a fire, and that fire could become a forest fire, and it will eventually destroy all of us. Are you angry with somebody? Make sure you deal with that, because right now it's like a small spark. It could turn into a big fire, right? For King Ahaz, it started off as some kind of insecurity. He's like, I don't feel comfortable because there might be people who might invite. I know God told me that he's going to protect me, but I feel uncomfortable. What should I do? What should I do? And eventually led to sacrificing children. You're like, how did it get from this little fear to something like killing a bunch of children? How did that happen? Jesus says, just because you didn't murder somebody doesn't mean that you're scot-free. No. It all started with a spark. It started with anger. It started with something very small. And that eventually became sacrificing children. So he says this, therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them. Then come and offer your gift. He says, make sure you deal with people first. If you're like, you know what? I worship God. I pray to him. I'm okay now. Me and God, we're good. Meanwhile, you have this conflict happening here. It's like, that doesn't fly. Because the way you love people, we talked about this here before, the way you love people is how you're loving God. This is why Jesus says it is important for you to love your enemies, right? The lesson here is this. If you can't respect another person, don't present yourself in public as someone who is right with God. Because deep down inside, what Jesus believes about humanity, and I think what he believes really counts here, is this, that your relationship with God is completely intertwined on the health of your relationships with others. Your relationship with one another matters to God. Well, God, I thought all you cared about was me and you, like how we relate to you. It's like, yes, I do care about that. Right? But I care about you so much because how you treat other people could become your own grave, right? So Jesus, what he's doing is he wants to rescue us, right? He wants to rescue us from destroying ourselves. He wants to rescue us from ourselves because we have a tendency of doing this. We cheat and we lie so that we feel safer or we could get ahead in life. But what we do instead is by cheating and lying, you're creating a culture where you're allowing them to cheat and lie towards you, and now you're at a worse place than you were before, right? So Jesus says, I want you to follow me. Follow me because if you follow me in my ways, I'm going to do my best to prevent you from creating your own Gehenna or hell. Maybe you guys can relate. You did something when you were younger. thinking that this, and it's not honest, it's cheating technically, it's disrespectful, but this is how I'm going to get ahead in life. And maybe you did get ahead in life. But then you only to find out later on that the culture you created is the thing that betrayed you at the end of your story. This is what Jesus is warning us about. So when Jesus says, be careful when you call somebody fool or wacha, like that you don't have value, that you're not human. When you do that, you're starting a fire that could eventually destroy yourself, so be careful. He's not talking about what would happen to you after you die. You're going to go to a fiery place where demons are poking you with pitchforks. He's like, that's not what he's talking about here. He's talking about right here, right now. How you treat other people matter. Especially people you disagree with. How you treat them matters. Now, I'm a pastor. I'm telling you guys what you should do. This is one of those examples where what I'm telling you to do is something that I've really struggled with. So I really don't have any right to tell you how to live your life. But as your pastor, I feel like I need to tell you anyways, right? I'm working on this. My wife will tell you that like I talk bad stuff about people all the time, and I need to work on it. But I hope that you guys could join me in this journey of creating less hell around us and more heaven on earth. Amen? Amen. Let's pray.